Welcome back into another episode of George in the Jungle, presented as always by Remington Tavern. Remington Tavern can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. You can check them out on Instagram at RemyTav Cincy. That's REMITAV Cincy with a Y, or follow them on Facebook. And with that, George, we are in episode 50 of this show. We have been together a half century, you and I.
Yeah. Sometimes it seems like it, Aaron. I'm just kidding. Honestly, a half century to me is nothing.
Well, you said it, not me.
Right.
But
that's true.
In any case, let's get into the games.
Yep.
We will start with your Cincinnati Bearcats, and they went to Orlando. I went to Orlando, and we all got to see a win down there in person. Cincinnati leaves victorious 19-13 in what came down to the final stretch, really, for the Golden Knights of Central Florida. And Cincinnati found a way to win instead of simply settling.
Yeah, it was a crazy game because it wasn't what we thought would unfold, which would be a shootout. Instead, it just turned into a knockdown, drag out. Obviously, mistakes by both offenses, turning the ball over a little bit, but give credit to that UC defense. I mean, it showed up when it needed to, and that's kind of been, a theme of theirs where they kind of give up some yards or give up some plays, but don't break. And, at the end of the game, they certainly didn't break. In fact, ending it with that sack was huge. So you give a lot of credit to the defense in that one, because I felt like early in the game, it kind of resembled the Bengals game in a way, where the offensive line didn't seem like it was doing what it should be doing. It was very weird how those two games kind of mirrored each other in that way. And then when put the shove, and UC and the Bengals needed something, they got it. Kiner was terrific in that last touchdown drive, and the offensive line all of a sudden started moving bodies, and they were able to get out of there with a win. And given what they're up against this week, it was really good to get out of there with a win, because they're going to run into a team this week that's playing very well, and certainly playing much better than what anyone thought before the beginning of the season. So you go on the road, you get a Big 12 win. Again, there were mistakes and missed field goals, and that reared its ugly head again. But overall, you have to feel pretty good about where they're at, what their record is, and how it seems like, maybe the defense is starting to get it together. We thought that after the Houston game, and then, it's still, like I said, points-wise, they did okay, but it just feels like it's coming together. It feels like they're getting better as the season goes along.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny that you say that both games represent, like, kind of reminded you of one another between the Bengals and the Bearcats, because both games were, truthfully, at least more so in the first half for the Bearcats, whereas I feel like the Bengals never really got out of their funk.
Right.
Sloppy, just a lot of sloppy play that ended up in wins for both teams somehow.
Yeah, well, that's you got to win those kind, during the course of the season. If there's going to be, not everything's going to be clicking every game, and it certainly wasn't this weekend for either of those teams offensively. But I thought Sorsby settled down, though, as the game went on.
He did. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely a much better second half for him than what he had in the first half. The first half was bizarre because it didn't look like him, because, he plays like this field general, and it just was very uneven. And, a couple of mistakes with the football that he made that's not characteristic of him. And I think he really got his act together at halftime and figured it out and was back to playing what we're used to seeing out of him.
Yeah, and you bring up that defense. Third down efficiency for Central Florida, 5 of 13. Not very good, although they were better on fourth down, 2 of 3. They did end up going for it quite a bit on fourth down. You held the run game under 200 yards for UCF. You held RJ Harvey under 100 yards, which both of those are not easy tasks to do.
No.
With this team, although you didn't have KJ Jefferson, you
Right.
had EJ Colson, who got the nod as a true freshman, I believe 17 years old.
Right.
And then that lasted for all of about 10 real minutes before you had Ja'Curry Brown, who came in and truthfully steadied the ship and put UCF in a spot to win. Although they weren't
with his feet. And yes, he for a guy who hasn't been playing a lot, he looked pretty darn good. Not great, but he definitely gave UC's defense a little bit to think about with those feet. And it was surprising when I saw that Jefferson wasn't starting and they were throwing in this freshman, and that kid comes in, and that can mess with you a little bit. That can mess with the defense because you're not, and it's interesting. And I guess the coach has talked about a little bit afterwards. I guess Coach Satterfield, and I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but it is different when you've been preparing for this other guy all week, and then kaboom, they throw this at you. Then they throw another guy at you, and I think he said they didn't have to scrap everything, and it wasn't like they had to scrub the whole game plan, but it does make a difference. And thank God for some of those big guys up front. I know I saw Corleone's PFF number, but it just felt like and looked to me like he played a little better than what that number was, because he was disrupting some things up front.
Yeah, it feels like he's gotten better and better the last couple of weeks. Even Coach Satterfield mentioned today in his presser that he's put together a string of 2 to 3 games now that have been great, and it looks like he's playing back to his normal style. Like he's about all the way back at this point. So certainly good to see from him. I don't know. It's the defense has been coming along. I think the bye week came at a very good time, and it seems like things are starting to click. Jake Golday did mention in his post-game presser that they found out about 15 minutes before the game that the quarterback had changed. So that's about as late as you can find out outside of just, I guess, showing up and throwing him out there. I don't know.
Golday's a guy that's been playing better. He had a good game, a very good game, very active. All over the place, and then he had the forced fumble and recovery, if I remember right. I mean, he was flying all over the place, and that's good to see. And I guess when you have this new defense and this new scheme and all these new guys that they have, it's going to take a while, and we should have expected it to take a while. But here they are, 6 games in or whatever, and it seems like it's starting to click.
I mean, as long as you're not bringing in,
they're able to play rather than have to think.
And as long as you're not bringing in an entire new, like 7-8 guys on defense, you should continue to see this trickle over from season to season, as opposed to just having to rinse, wash, repeat.
You hope in this day and age, it's just so, and they're not the only team that has to deal with it.
Right.
And they're going to play a team this Saturday that's got about as many new guys on the roster as UC does.
Antoine Peak was named there's a full PFF National Team of the Week. He was named to that. He was also the highest graded safety in the Big 12 and the number 2 safety in the nation, according to PFF. I believe Golday was actually the Big 12 newcomer of the week as well. I'm not mistaken. Yes. So lots of accolades going around, and we've seen Sorsby win the Big 12 newcomer of the week twice now. So they're putting some things together. You're playing a 5-1 Arizona State team this week that has championship aspirations, which we'll certainly get to that conversation. But finishing the conversation against UCF, um, you talked about they found a way to win. Your rushing game was not where it has been
No,
earlier in the season. You finished the game with 3 yards per carry. Kiner under 100 yards, but that Clifton toughness, that gritty Cincinnati grit, blue collar city, however you want to say it, they did what was necessary. You had guys like Jamoy Mays making huge plays. Tony Johnson had a coming out party in front of
yeah, what a great game he had.
a bunch of family and friends there down in Florida. Joe Royer had a great game as well.
Yep.
And that dude looked like he was dinged up early from what I saw from the press box. He just looked like he was walking a little gingerly, but he gives you everything he has out on the field.
Right.
But the weapons have come through. This team is very different than last year.
Yeah, they have different options. Yeah, many different options. He doesn't have to look for Henderson on every play anymore. And the pass Sorsby threw to Johnson for that last touchdown. I mean, God, that was just that was perfect. It was perfect. And Tony Johnson be able to do that in front of a lot of family and friends down there since he's from Florida. And I didn't know he was originally a walk-on either. He was a walk-on at Florida Atlantic. And you talk about making yourself into a player. And you mentioned Antoine Peak before. That's another one that, a walk-on who is now becoming a regular, solid contributor. And you just love those stories.
Yeah. Tony Johnson was knocked out of the game. He couldn't breathe, apparently. He had the wind knocked out of him. And 2 plays later, he's back out there getting the job done.
Yes. It was kind of scary when you saw him down like that and you knew something was going on. You're hoping that's all it is, and it's not going to be, like the issue Kiner had in the game before at Texas Tech where he had to leave and not come back in because of a oblique or rib issue. And you're hoping that's not it. Thank goodness it was just getting the wind knocked out of you. But I mean, that can scare you when that happens to you. It's not fun, but you're going to get over it. And he was able to bounce back quickly.
Yeah, crazy turn of events. And truthfully, I mean, we've seen this staff now for a season and a half, and that game felt like a game that we would normally see Cincinnati lose.
Yeah, no doubt. They would have last year for sure.
Yes.
I mean, that was the kind of situation where they just did not, for whatever reason, excel in, and things would fall apart when they're not going well. And this game went the complete opposite. It's like they found a way to stick with it and keep working. And then finally they found enough to work to get out of there with a win. And I didn't see that out of them last year. And they had plenty of games that came down to the wire last year that fell apart on them. And this one went the other way, thankfully. And that's a sign of progress as well.
Last year, the missed extra point would have come back to haunt you, or the missed field goal would have come back to haunt you. And again, this season, or this week, they found a way to not let those things come back to haunt them. And the defense, it was certainly the bend but not break defense that you want to see. There were plenty of opportunities for UCF, truthfully, to march down the score or to create momentum that they did not have, and this defense did not allow that.
That missed extra point, everyone was probably thinking about that during that final drive for UCF. It's like, oh my God. Right. It's the exact situation when he misses that extra point. You're like, God, I hope this doesn't come back to bite him. And you kind of felt like it would, because it seems like it happened so many times that way. And they were able to hold on and just, it got scary there at the end. But man, oh man, thank God on that last play, they brought extra pressure and it worked. I mean, that was the thing you had to do. You couldn't give that quarterback time with a 3-man rush to run around and somebody breaks open, whether it's in the end zone or at the 5 and they take it in, whatever. You don't want to give time for a busted play and just some crazy thing to happen. So they brought some pressure and by God, it worked. In fact, he had no time to throw.
So, like we've kind of beat the drum, I think, at this point enough. But Cincinnati figured it out. They got the win, and this week they're playing against maybe the biggest surprise in the Big 12. Arizona State was picked by the media to finish last in the Big 12.
Shows what the media knows.
Well, and Cincinnati was not picked much higher than them, truthfully.
Right.
And they sit now at 2-1 in the conference standings and 4-2 overall. But this Arizona State team is interesting.
Yep.
They have the youngest coach in, I believe, all of college football. In Dillingham, he's
Dillingham,
very young. They're doing things. They were running the ball really well earlier in the season. Now they've started to add the passing game because teams are stacking the box and they're still getting the job done. Their defense has been, coach said today, their defense is stingy. They create havoc, which Sorsby over the last 2 games has seen his fair share of havoc. But these last couple games kind of are reminiscent of each other in the fact that you're preparing for a team that relies heavily on the run, has a star running back. You're facing now the 3rd running back in a row that has been a top 10 in the nation running back. And it's cool that you don't have to change your game plan an awful lot, but you still have to change the game plan. You can't just keep throwing the same things out there over and over again.
Right.
But I think it'll be interesting in that they probably resemble Texas Tech a little bit more so than UCF. But they are trying to limit your possessions as opposed to Texas Tech, who is just trying to score every time they have the ball as quickly as they can.
Yes, they work very, very fast. Arizona State plays keep away. And so they're going to, run the play clock down. They're going to huddle. They're going to do whatever they can do to keep drives alive, keep grounding it out with that running back. What's his name? Cameron
Scatabo.
Yeah, and he, was terrific again Friday night. And my God, I did not predict that kind of a win for them against Utah. What a turnaround from a year ago when they got trounced. But it's a brand new team. I mentioned that they brought in about the same amount of guys brand new that UC did, turned over half their roster and seemed to be hitting the jackpot. And that coach, you look at his pedigree, he's young, but he's his lineage is nothing to sneeze at. He's been, he was tied to Norvell at Memphis. He's been at Oregon. He's been to some places that have some quality football, and obviously he's an enthusiastic guy. I don't know if you got to see him on the field after the game, but he ended up with the students jumping up and down,
bouncing around. Yep.
Yeah, it was funny. Very, very high spirited guy, and infectious right now with the way he's got that team playing, and so. We'll see if that Bearcat defense can do it again and keep another good running back. My God, every week they're going up against a guy who can really make you pay at the running back position.
Some familiar faces on both teams as kicker Carter Brown was at Arizona State before transferring to Cincinnati. On the other side of the field, you have Justin Watley, a former defensive end for the Cincinnati Bearcats, as well as Shema Mater, a former tight end for the Cincinnati Bearcats. I don't know. How are you feeling about having a team that is 5-1 here for homecoming at least it's at home. I feel better the fact that it is at home. The line in this game off the bat is Cincinnati currently is at -3. It opened up Cincinnati -2.5. Opened up at 53.5 on the over under, and it's moved to 52.5. How are you feeling on this game, George?
Well, I'd rather have night games at Nippert, but I kind of like this one being noon because it's so darn early for Arizona State.
Coach made a joke about that today. I don't know if you heard it or not. He said that it used to be nip at night, and now it's nip at noon.
Yeah, that was funny. I did hear that. That's what it seems like every week it is. It's I'm glad that they're having to play at noon, which will be like 9 a.m. for those guys out at Arizona State. And they're going to have to get used to that, just like UC is going to have to get used to 10-15 kickoffs like they're going to have next week when they head out to Colorado. So it's just going to be another toss-up game, in my opinion, where it may come down to that last drive again, like we saw last Saturday, whether UC's looking to score points to win or looking to hold Arizona out of the end zone to win. But Arizona State, I'm totally expecting to have to hold my breath from start to finish on this
one. For whatever it's worth, ESPN's analytics put Cincinnati at a 61.8% chance to win this game. I was looking at some of the stats here. Cincinnati has scored 186 points this season. Arizona State has scored 193. Cincinnati has held opponents to only 121. Of course, that's bolstered by a shutout against Houston. Arizona State has allowed 138 points. Arizona State is 4-0 at home. They are 1-1 on the road. Cincinnati is 2-1, both on the road and at home. I don't put a whole lot into any of that stuff, truthfully. I think that it's going to be interesting to see if Cincinnati can establish a run game because it's been a little bottled up over the course of the last 3 games.
Yep.
Corey has been dinged up, and I'm curious to see what Corey we're going to see. I thought he looked great against UCF, but he was dinged up right before the bye week as he only played the first quarter against Texas Tech. So we'll see.
It was good to have him back. I know that. Very good to have him back. And
not a knock on Manny Covey, who held down the fort.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, it was amazing going into that bye week, though, when they lost all those running backs in that Texas Tech. It was nuts. Like they were 4 deep on their running back chart at that point, and thank God they all got healthy, and hopefully they're back in the flow, and we'll see a little bit more of that run game against Arizona State because UC is going to need it. Anytime you're playing a close game like that, you're going to need to be able to run the ball and get some tough first downs. And by God, if nothing else, Kiner's built for that.
I agree. And you also get Tinsley back this week by the sounds of it, as he was practicing on Sunday. So that should bolster your offensive line. So again, I think it'll be interesting. And if Sorsby continues the way he's been, if he's able to continue to build on what he did in the second half as opposed to what he did in the first half and have another good game to a great game compared to the last 2 games where he's had turnovers and made some errant throws, maybe we're talking about, is this Cincinnati team for real in a week from now, as they have, I wouldn't say a completely favorable schedule, but what we thought was a favorable schedule early on, which has turned out that the Big 12 kind of flip-flopping from what we thought it was going to be, and now maybe not so favorable as we once.
Right. I mean, you thought this game for homecoming would be one of the more favorable matchups for Cincinnati.
Sure.
That's not the case. But I think, and get back to Sorsby and his game and where he's at, and I think it helps him. He's got another weapon now. He's got another guy he can trust in Tony Johnson. So, he knows he can put it in the hands of several different guys and trust them to be there and make the play. So I think again, that can only help him going forward.
Yeah, I think right now, if we're looking at the weapons he's collected, you're looking at Xavier Henderson, you're looking at Joe Royer, you're looking at Jamoy Mays, you're looking at Sterling Burkhalter at times, and now Tony Johnson. And not to mention any running back who he's giving the ball to has performed magnificently at one point or another throughout the season. So should be an interesting game. I'm nervous. I'm certainly nervous,
Yeah,
but
just about it.
we'll see how it goes.
Maybe some of those nerves might get out of the way at that basketball game Friday night too. That'll be fun.
Yeah. There is the exhibition against Ohio State. So we'll have. Are you going?
Yeah,
Take
yeah.
notes.
I'll be there. I'll take notes. I'm really, really looking forward to that and seeing this team and seeing these new guys. And it's a shame Tyler McKinley's hurt, but they still have enough that gives you hope. And they're ranked to start the season, which was really great to see. And then when you look at it, this era of transfer portal and all that, but you look at their projected starters, 4 of them are guys that played here last year. So it says a lot about the program, keeping all these guys around too, and still adding what they added. It feels like they're could easily go 10 deep. And it was interesting to hear Wes talk about that and how they approach that game, and that while you'll coach, to win and win possessions, it's not necessarily like a real game. So, he's going to be figuring out what groups can play together and things like that. So it'll probably be a little different than what we're going to see when they tip off for real. But you see a lot of that in early season anyway. I mean, they just kind of, you got to throw them out there against somebody else and see what combinations work the best. So I'm anxious to see what he has cooked up, and obviously see improvements from the guys returning, and then hopefully see what these youngsters have or the newcomers have, because they're not all youngsters. But there are some good newcomers that I'm anxious to see.
Yeah, your Bearcats start off at 20 in the preseason AP poll, 17 in the KenPom rankings in the preseason KenPom. Who was your projected starting 5? Who does George Vogel want to see?
Well, I think what we'll see. Well, I think you'll see Jizzle and Dan and Seamoss and Bandego, and then the kid from Texas will probably be the other one, right?
Dylan Mitchell, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what we'll see. But I'm anxious to see Page get out there, because I have not seen him play in person, but I'm anxious to see him get out there and take the floor. And you see these highlight reels of him and his size to handle the ball the way he did on the clips I saw. Very, very promising stuff. And he just got caught in a bad situation out there at USC where he was injured and never really got going and in the flow and in the rotation.
He had mono.
He thought he would.
Yeah, he had mono.
Well, that'll knock you out for a long time.
Yeah. I'm certainly excited. Connor Hickman, another guy I'm excited to see.
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
Here, I guess I'll be hearing more than seeing, but excited to find out what he brings to the table with this team. So yeah,
he was impressive in that NIT game. Certainly in the first half, he was. He does more than what is advertised.
Then you got Tyler Betsy and Day and CJ Frederick, and
right.
I mean, there's a lot of dudes on this team.
Josh Reed's coming back, and I always hold out hope for him, because fundamentally he seems pretty good till he throws up an air ball from 3. But I want to see if he's improved, because Wes says he has, and I kind of want to see it.
And Rayvon Griffith, of course, as well.
Oh my God, I can't wait to see him. Yeah, and you give him all the credit in the world, sticking around and redshirting that season and sticking it out, and always seems to be enthused about the team and always seems to be supporting everyone. So I'm really happy and very anxious to see him get a chance to start his collegiate career, and hopefully he starts it in a good way. I saw one of his final games with Taft. It was a regional semifinal, maybe. I saw him playing against my Georgetown G-men, and the G-men didn't give him much of a fight that night. But Rayvon didn't have to do a whole lot in that game, and on that Taft team, he had some help. That was a solid team, no doubt about it.
Yeah, coach said he led the summer workouts in rebounds. So we'll see what that means. He said that's a stat he likes to keep track of, and he certainly recognized whose name was at the top there. So
there's going to be a lot to see Friday night. I'm looking forward to it.
A lot of dudes on this team, and you'll probably see some extra minutes for some of the guys that would be on the end of the bench.
Yeah, and that's fine too. I want to see.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. So should be fun for everyone. I'm not sure that it's sold out. I think you can still get tickets, but the lower bowl did sell out.
Yeah,
so
that sold out. I don't know how many in the upper deck, but I think I'm up there in my regular seats.
You and Chief.
Yeah, and Negative Phil up there in 219 row 1. We got our little perch up there right above the media.
All right. Well,
I'll keep an eye on Chad.
In any case, you've alluded to this game earlier, but there was another football game played by a Cincinnati team, another sloppy football game played by another Cincinnati team, as the Cincinnati Bengals. They win 17-7. The final score is certainly not indicative of how this game went. It was a I don't know. It was just a defense game. You wanted to see a defense game. Don't get me wrong. As Cincinnati's defense did hold up their end of the bargain, certainly coming off of maybe one of the worst defensive performances I've seen in quite some time by the Cincinnati Bengals. But you had missed kicks. You had Joe Burrow getting stepped on by a defensive line, or I'm sorry, by an offensive lineman, as Cordell Volson stepped on his foot at one point in time. Probably not a shocker as to which offensive lineman it was out of the bunch, but I don't know. I watched that game and I was so nervous that they were going to lose another one. They did find a way to win. Yeah. Jamar Chase had a very strange missed catch that you don't expect him to miss. It's just everything offensively looked messy until you did see Joe take off for a 50-yard touchdown. That will probably be his career long. I can't imagine 47 yards. I think was the final number on it, but I can't imagine he tops that in his career. He hit a top speed. I think they measured him at like 19.8 on that. People were sharing a tweet he sent out in like 2018, 2019, something like that, where he said he was sneaky fast, and Jamar retweeted it and said, this dude thinks he's 20 miles an hour fast or something along those lines. And here he is, 20 mile an hour fast and running a 47-yard touchdown. The other touchdown, of course, comes from Chase Brown as he broke one off. And that was, I think, probably the prettiest play of the game offensively. But what a weird game.
It was totally weird and definitely dominated by defenses. That play by Burrow was hilarious when they showed the angle he's seeing, and you saw how much. I mean, the Giants totally vacated that side of the field.
I don't know. Was there anybody on that side of? There was nobody on that side of the hash, but on the side of the far hash.
Yeah, that safety, once he turned his back and he wasn't even watching him. And
why would you?
He turns his back, and that's when it was like, oh my God, he's going to take this the distance, and he did.
Sure enough.
Really heads up playing. It seemed like in that drive, even before that, he had another run where I think he kind of made up his mind if he saw some openings in this game, he was going to try to take advantage using his legs. And
at least
I don't think he had a 50-yard run in mind, but it worked out.
Yeah. The play, maybe the play of the game was, I believe it was Yoshi making a catch on the sideline as Joe is coming he's scrambling to the left in the fourth quarter on the Chase Brown drive, and he's throwing across his body to this left sideline to Yoshi, who just toe taps as he falling out of bounds to extend the drive on a third down, crucial third down.
Yeah, I think that kid's having a good year,
Yeah.
and he's definitely reliable in the clutch when they need something like that. And I wasn't surprised, that he found him in that situation. He just seems like a heady player to me. T had a pretty good game. Jamar had that one uncharacteristic drop that that could have turned into a big play, and that play was sticking in my mind as the game went on. As one you might look back on and say that definitely contributed to a loss if they were to lose it. But thankfully, they found a way to do it and found a way to put together a pretty good drive when they needed it most to put that game away, because that Giants defense was playing really, really well. They were very active up front and disrupting things. And so, like I said, I feel about the same way about that game as I do the UC one, that they found a way to win, which is a positive. And it wasn't a whole lot pretty about it, but no one's going to complain when you get out of there with a W.
Yeah, Joe was sacked 4 times. It certainly felt like he was going to go down more than that, but he was able to get the ball out. He also did have the intentional grounding call where he threw it to no one. I think a right tackle was over there where he ended up throwing it.
It looked like he was trying to make a case for somebody being over there, but I didn't see anyone.
No, it was like there was a 70 out there. That wasn't anybody else. It was a 70. 19 of 28
play too when they showed him in the pocket between the tackles, going from one side to the other, back to the other, back to the other. That was really funny. I'll tell you, those guys, they're amazing. Those quarterbacks in the NFL that can move a little bit. And I put Joe in that category. Like, I just think he's usually really good in the pocket, has good pocket awareness, and just the athleticism of these guys is just off the charts.
19 of 28 for Joe Burrow. He finishes 208 in the air with the adjustment for sacks. He finishes with 183. Chase Brown, 10 carries, 53 yards, got that touchdown I was talking about. Zach Moss, only 6 carries, 13 yards. Has Chase Brown taken the job?
He's probably going to get the bulk of the carries from here on out, right? I mean, he's produced a little better, in my opinion, if not a lot better. They're just going to have to find out how much they can feed him the ball and him still be effective. I don't know that he's every down, and that's probably not so either, because you just look at his size and say that, but very tough kid, and that run was damn good, and that's what I kind of expected out of him. Like, if he gets a crack and hits it, he can bust him. And he busted that one and got some help along the way. The Bengals blocked pretty well on that play, and Chase was able to do the rest. But yeah, that's a good question as to whether or not he now becomes more of the featured guy. And if I had a vote, I'd vote yes.
Now, both running backs, both Zach Moss and Chase Brown, did have fumbles. Zach Moss's, of course, was recovered by the Giants, and Chase Brown, they were able to get it. Well, it went out of bounds, if I'm remembering correctly.
That was fortunate. That was very,
thank God.
Yeah, that could have been a major mistake, and he went from potential GOAT to hero in a matter of a few plays, I believe it was.
Just no one could get their hands on the ball. It gets kicked out of bounds in the shuffle of everything. And again, that seemed like a Cincinnati fan is used to seeing those kind of plays go to the other team, not just happen to go out of bounds. So Lady Luck was favoring the Cincinnati teams this weekend.
For a change.
It's odd. It felt weird, and I didn't know what to do with those feelings. Cam Taylor-Britt had a good game. DJ Turner had a good game. He had a gaff. He did have a gaff. I believe he was the one who let the touchdown go.
Yeah.
But he had some big plays. So he's still coming around for the second year guy.
Yeah, he still has a chance to be some help for sure.
Trey Hendrickson is a monster.
Yeah. He
But
just keeps producing.
And Jermaine Pratt, I thought, had a really good game defensively.
Yes, he did. They had a lot of guys played well in the defense. I thought BJ Hill was really good.
Oh, I totally forgot to mention it. Yeah, he was everywhere against his former team.
Yes, going back, I think, he may have had this one circled a little bit, got out there in that stadium and felt like, okay, time for me to shine, and he did. He played very well.
You did have Evan McPherson making a 37-yard field goal. It made both of his extra points. Reckow continues to be great kicking. I still don't know that I love, and I don't know that at this point I'm ever going to change my mind. I still don't know that I love Zach Taylor calling plays, but they figured it out. I thought play selection was odd throughout the game, truthfully.
It felt very choppy, but the Giants had something to do with that, the way they were playing too. I mean, God dang, they had some disruptive players there.
But Lou figured out whatever was going on last week, and he ironed things out that this defense showed up. That did not look like the same defense from last week.
No, not at all. I'm sure there was a lot of work during the week towards that goal and probably a few tough conversations with some guys that they got to get going or else. And they got going. It was good to see. And, I made it clear. I know every week the defense isn't great. Sometimes it's less than that, but I'm still a big believer in Lou, and I think he knows what he's doing and just has that ability to put guys where they can make big plays, and I think he continues to do that.
Now, next week, you travel to Cleveland to play the 1-5 Cleveland Browns. Cincinnati favorite in that one, 6.5, but we know that against Cleveland, it never means anything.
I know, and I'm not going to take it for granted. I'm going to probably expect them to really have to fight to get a win out of there, even though Cleveland looks pretty bad right now. They're kind of reeling, and they just traded Amari Cooper today, and it's just, quite honestly, they've looked horrible. And I don't know if they're going to dig themselves out of that this season. It doesn't look like it. But for whatever reason, when they play the Bengals, it doesn't matter how bad they've been playing against everyone else. They find a way to make it tough, and then more often than not, find a way to get a win.
That over-under did shift 2 points from 4.5, I'm assuming after the trade of Amari Cooper. And we'll see if there's any more trades to be had by Cleveland at this point. The over-under opened at 44.5 and drops to 41.5. That's an interesting number.
It is kind of low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there is obviously it's not a must win in game 7 of the season, but you can't lose to this Cleveland Browns team.
No, and not expect to be a playoff team yourself. No, you can't. However, it is up there, and it's just there's always that wild card on defense for them. Myles Garrett, he seems to make a play every game that is impactful, and he did it this past week with a blocked field goal that turned into a touchdown. So, and he's had his games against Cincinnati.
Nick Chubb comes back as well this week.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what he's got. That'll be very interesting because he's been a Bengal killer too.
He should have fresh legs, considering he hasn't used them in about a year.
Right. For good reason.
Yeah.
I hope, I mean, for his sake, and I know some people who know him and his family, and they're great people from, I want to say it's Chubb, North Carolina, where he's from. Or is it Chubb, Georgia? It might be Georgia. But anyway, that's the name of the town, is named after the family, and there's nothing but
That's
a bunch
wild.
of Chubbs down there. There's all these Chubbs that I'm not kidding. I've heard this story, and yeah, they have a good time down there in Chubb. So
I can't.
and I'm sure there'll be a lot of them on hand in Cleveland. I know, his parents were always going to all the road games and everything, and so I while he's a Cleveland Brown, and I don't want him to tear the Bengals up, I do like have a little bit of a. I just like to see him do well because I know how good his family is.
Glad you didn't say you had a little chub for it.
I was not going there.
Baltimore and Pittsburgh 4-2 in the conference. Cincinnati sits at third place. Obviously, the conference is not out of reach as you're only 2 games back. Pittsburgh makes a wild change as Justin Fields has been benched for Russ.
I know. I don't know. I mean, I feel like Mike Tomlin knows what he's doing, but I don't know about this one.
When you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback.
Right. Exactly. And we'll see if Russ has anything left in the tank, because I'm sorry, it hasn't looked like it for several seasons to me.
I can't believe you go away from the guy who got you to 4-2. Look, I'm not big on Justin Fields, truthfully, but I'm certainly not big on Russ.
Right. No, they've got 2, if you can call them anyone in the NFL mediocre, but it seems like it's mediocre what they get out of that quarterback position. We'll see. Maybe Russ does have something left, but I'm not expecting it.
I'm not either. I wonder how long his leash is in this game, truthfully.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch that unfold. And what time is that game? Is that?
I can tell you here in a second. It is going to be at. The Steelers take on the Jets, hosting the Jets at 8:20 on Sunday. So they got the Sunday night game.
Sunday night game. Okay, that's what I thought. I thought I saw that promoted, and then I just had a block there and didn't remember if that was right. So yeah, that's.
And of course, you'll have Aaron Rodgers throwing to his old pal Davante Adams in that game, as it was. Pat McAfee, who had Aaron Rodgers on today, and Davante Adams was already there hanging out with him.
How about that? Well, he was dying to get there. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he forced the Raiders' hands on this thing, and I wonder if it'll just be like old times where it's just like you line up over there and you're running this route. And I mean, that seems like what you would do, right? You don't want any kind of an adjustment period. Just put him out there and let him do his thing.
Aaron has just been collecting all of his old receivers in New York. He had he's got Lazard there right now. He's got Devontae back. He had a guy last season whose name escapes me that he had from Green Bay as well. Old palette, that one. But just what a weird thing. You get Salah fired. You got Salah fired, and you lose anyway again.
Right. What a mess.
Yes. Unequivocally.
I mean, regardless what he says, it feels like he's running the show up there and not anybody else.
Yep. I would not disagree with any of that. I don't know that I have too much else. I know we have a game in 4 days as Cincinnati hosts Philly. I know we did touch on that. Philly is a -115 to win. Cincinnati +245 to win on that one. Of course, the draw the lovely draw plus 290. But that game on Saturday at 6. Any thoughts
End of
there?
the regular season.
Thank God.
On to the playoffs. Yeah, it seems like it's been long, and it is because you have those breaks in there, and they're coming off another break. But yeah, Cincinnati locked in the third place and try to finish the season strong. Although it doesn't matter a whole lot to them because it's not going to change their position either way in where they stay in the playoffs.
Not a whole lot of momentum going for FC Cincinnati as they're getting ready for the playoffs.
Oh,
So I think you need this one.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, you don't want to go in. What is it? Would be four straight losses if they cough this one up.
It'd be 4 straight with a draw right before those 4.
Yeah, that's not a lot of momentum, but Coach Noonan feels like they're trending in the right direction. I certainly hope he's right.
Your last win, of course, coming September 18th against Minnesota. Ugh.
Then high school football, we got a few big games this week. Lakota West hosting Lakota East. The Battle of the Lakotas is always big. And West 7-1, East 6-2. The biggest game, probably undefeated Winton Woods at undefeated Anderson. Big East Cincinnati Conference game. Indian Hill at Wyoming in the CHL. Two teams who have been big in this conference for a long time. Indian Hill 7-1, Wyoming undefeated, and in Kentucky, Cooper still undefeated, 8-0, playing at Boone County this week, and should be 9-0 after this one.
All right,
2 more weeks in the regular season there.
I know we are about 8 minutes early on where we normally are, but I'm out of gas. If you got anything else,
I'm out of gas. My well, maybe I'm not. My stomach's killing me, so I don't know what's going on here.
On that note,
Yeah,
that was another episode of George in the Jungle. Presented as always by Remington Tavern. They can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Check them out on Instagram at RemyTavCincy or follow them on Facebook. But for George Vogel, I'm Aaron Smith. We'll see you back here 9 o'clock next Tuesday, where we do it every week, talking about your Cincinnati sports.